Well, hello, guys. How are you guys doing tonight?
Howdy.
It's good to see y'all again.
Good seeing you guys.
Good to see everybody in the chat tonight. We already have about 50 people watching, give or take a few, and we're just 2 minutes, almost 3 minutes in. So appreciate everyone joining us tonight. I think we're going to have us a fun chat tonight. Talk about kind of piggyback on what we talked about last week with decisions made, but we're going to take a little different twist, no pun intended, to that topic tonight. So looking forward to getting talking to you guys tonight, and hopefully we can get to some answers, or hope we can get to some questions tonight and be able to answer some questions folks may have. But let's just go around the horn real quick, see what's going on in you guys' worlds tonight. Brian, why don't we start with you? What's going on up there in the Cleveland area?
Yep. Well, everything is. I think my apiary is probably sitting about the best that it has been all year. Colonies are looking good. I actually was able to. I found in my inspections last time one of those magical. I'm using the proper words. They're magical. One of those fantastic. One of the magnificent, superb Pepto Queens.
Wow.
I'm doing an inspection and I find one cell. So I'm like, well, not today. So I took that, put it over in one of my resource colonies and checked it, and poof, that's the first time all year that my resource colonies have successfully ended up with a mated queen.
So your resource colony is resourced.
It's resourced, yes. So
late in the year. Wow.
Yeah. So that's fine. But
That's
things
cool.
are looking good. I've the mite counts were low. I was dreading when I went in to check them just because I had put pollen patties in them, but I just put little squares really. And then it had been 2 weeks. Just I had everything going on in the family, so I couldn't get back over there. And I was dreading going in there, just figuring, well, I'm just going to pull it open, and there's going to be, little small hive beetle larvae just running rampant. Those colonies obliterated those patties. My buckets were empty, so they needed it. Ended up with no problems. There's weight on some of the colonies. So things are looking good. Things are actually looking good. So I'm hoping I've got to either get over tomorrow, or it's got to be tomorrow. I got to go over and just try and equalize some of the stronger colonies and pull a couple splits. That way my numbers will be up to, let me see, I don't know, 14 or 15 then. So looking better. I mean, things are looking better. So I'm not going to get the apiary set into motion to produce a fall honey crop. I want strong colonies, and they're looking that way. So I'm actually content with where they're at.
Good deal.
Yeah.
That's good to hear, man. I know it was stressful there for you for a while, but it sounds like things are turning around for you and looking good right now, and that's good news. It reminds me of my year last year a little bit, where some of my colonies peaked late. Like some of them were just beginning to peak right around the time honey season was over, and the honey season was short, so I kind of got messed up. But some of those colonies turned out to be really nice colonies this year for me, so it worked out okay.
Yeah.
Well, how about you up there in Hopewell, Ohio, Greg? How are things going for you up there?
No, they're going. I've got a bunch of long story longs, but for now, it's just the mental gymnastics are certainly special right now, and more so feel like I saw a short come through where it's this guy and he's like extremely focused, and I don't really pay attention to the Olympics much, so I don't really know what the names of the things are, but there's this thing where like you run down the stretch and then you jump on this like trampoline type deal, and I guess the idea is you jump up on like this bench table thing, and I guess you do your tricks or something.
Is that the vault?
Not, I've got plenty of those where you're running down with the vault stick and you go to do the thing where it launches you and you just plant face first and the vault pole breaks, and I've got plenty of those. But the short that I seen was the guy where he just runs and jumps on this little trampoline thing. I guess the idea is you jump up on some kind of looks like a bull, like a bull
Oh,
riding,
the
whatever.
pommel horse, probably.
That's okay, that thing. Well, the guy goes to do it and he's like extremely focused and he's just taking off, right? And he just, when he goes to jump on the trampoline thing, he totally overshoots the trampoline thing and face plants into the
Oh,
whatever you
yeah.
called it. That's what boy, maybe we'll talk a little bit exactly what I mean by that. But it is that time of year right now. We've got ironweed blooming. The very first goldenrod is getting ready to open up. Bees have been going hungry. We've been just putting the feed to them. They've been sucking it down. They're just really starting to slow down. And it's a really you really got to be on point with what you've seen in the past, what you think that they'll do, and where you need to go, and try to put together that plan right now. Because if you are expecting too much out of your bees this late in the year, you could be setting yourself up for some really critical errors. And so we're trying to work through those things. There's something I'll talk a little bit later about the silver lining in a certain going for gold by going for silver with a certain hybridization of queens here. But one of the fun things is we've been going for gold coming with in regard to our queen ring this year, and we almost hit 2,000 grafts. Almost hit 2,000 grafts in July. I don't think we're obviously not going to hit that until possibly next week. We can talk more about that too, because the mental gymnastics that a guy has to go through to put that kind of a plan together. And then when you start to see the outcomes, how you adapt and change. There used to be a time where you were just going for the number and you were hell bent on it. And you talk about collateral damage when you were just stuck on the number. But anyways, that's where we're at right now. Is it's just we're in dearth. All season indicators say fall's coming. It's coming early, which means I'm worried. If we continue with good rain, maybe the goldenrod will actually produce. If we keep going through these dry spells, we may be in a tight spot on goldenrod as far as nectar goes. But we're getting ready to go. We're prepping for this weekend's learning yard. I believe we're going to see Mr. Brian Coper there. He's going to be picking up a handful of Pepto Pinks. And we may even see a world famous YouTube beekeeper may also be passing through there. That's going to be a lot of fun. And man, we're just, I'm in a spot, Bruce, right now where my brain is just, it's fogged, it's mashed up. And for the first time in this entire season, I've got allergies kicking in, and it's in high gear. So that's about it for right now. Bruce, how are things going down in Dothan, Alabama?
Well, I got into my bees this weekend, just kind of peeked in on them. I was putting a lot of my bees are near cotton, big farming areas. And so I wanted to get some, first of all, check and see, just peek in on them, check the strength of them. I didn't want to really go through them. I didn't go through them much. I pulled out a few frames here or there, but two things that happened. Number one, I was actually putting in some probiotics in the ones, particularly those that route on fields, or the ones that may have been struggling a little bit, or in farmers areas, just in case they're spraying things now for the cotton or whatever. But so that was my goal. I went through almost not all my colonies, but all of them except for just a very few. I just kind of peeked in on. My goal was to crack the lid, look at the overall health of the colony, see if they were still strong, and just kind of try. And a lot of them, I actually put probiotics until I ran out. I've used an entire bag of probiotics this year, so I probably need to order some more. But anyway, well, the bees, the two things that happened. Number one, bees were not amused. Yeah, They weren't too bad early in the day, but as the day moved on, we had a thunderstorm off in the distance. I don't think the thunderstorm ever came and rained on us, but you could hear it rumbling in the distance. So obviously the barometric pressure was kind of off, and it was one of those just thunderstormy, kind of dark afternoons, cloudy. And man, the bees were just fired up. And then I was trying to go fast, and I didn't even light my smoker up. And so that made it even worse. And I'm like, I can just get through like 5 more colonies. That's all I got left. And anyway, that's when I messaged Greg, and I'm like, man, I got to do something about these bees, but it's my own fault. Number one, I didn't have the smoker lit up. Number two, it was really not good conditions. And this is the rough time of year for the bees anyway. Overall, the bees look really good. I mean, that I didn't go in them deeply, but they were covering the frames, lots of bees in the colonies. They were doing great. Ian asked if we're still doing cotton honey. Ian, yes, I actually noticed in some of them, I turned the frames up sideways and did the old side, frame, the shake test. And sure enough, they rained nectar, which means that, yes, the cotton is blooming. It's pretty much in full bloom right now in most of the areas around here. So it's actually just kind of saves me this time of the year. I don't have to do a lot of feeding. It almost looks like a honey flow. It is a honey flow. But I let the bees pretty much keep the cotton honey. It's very good tasting, but I don't harvest it for 2 reasons. Number one, I want the bees to have some food. I like to let them load up on it. Number two, I just don't want to harvest any more honey. I've got as much honey as I want. And I just don't like to take from the bees late in the season. I just like to let them kind of keep it. And it's worked for me. I've never harvested in the fall. I've never done a fall harvest, even though a lot of people around here do that, because people like the taste of the cotton honey. It's just a unique flavor, but it's really good. It's really sweet. And it does crystallize extremely fast though. And that's one reason a lot of people, I guess, don't harvest it, or if they do, I think it would probably make really good creamed honey. But I haven't started doing that yet. I've got all kinds of things that I've done, but that's one I have not done much of at all yet. So gonna probably take the week off from the bees this weekend. We have some things planned. Not gonna be on the bees this weekend. The next weekend, I'm gonna go in and pull the strips out, apivar strips. I'm gonna go in and try to, not this coming weekend, but the following weekend, go ahead and measure for mites, test and see how they look, and reassess and go from there. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. Just trying to recover a little bit. I've been, one reason, and I kind of wanted to go on into the intro for this video. I had it named something different when I got it set up last night, and I changed the video name to the mental gymnastics of beekeeping, because honestly, that is exactly what it feels like. Obviously we have the Olympics going on. I'm not going to get into the debate about all the stuff that's going on with the Olympics. We're not going to go there. So you guys, I'm going to mute you if you start going there. We're not going to. But I personally, I've watched some. I think the Olympic ceremonies was just crazy. But I support the athletes, and so we've seen some athletes doing some incredible things. These gymnasts are doing some amazing things. So I thought, mental gymnastics. What do gymnasts do? They do a lot of twists and turns and jumps and different change of direction. They do all kinds of crazy stuff. And Greg, what you were suggesting earlier, I think I've seen that video where the guy's running down the long runway and he hits the trampoline. He's actually hitting the vault platform that they bounce off and go flying in the sky. And instead of something slipped on the trampoline, he just went and he just belly flopped right into that thing full speed, and it looks extremely painful. I imagine he laid there for a while after that. But I've seen that. That was from a while back, I guess, as a practice run. I've seen that. One of my coworkers showed that to me yesterday, the day before. So looks extremely painful. So I knew what you were talking about there. But mental gymnastics, we can definitely use that as a symbol or as a representation of what happens in our minds in beekeeping, probably in life in general, but especially in beekeeping. This time of year, Greg, you mentioned a little bit of that. So many things going on, so many decisions to make. And there are a couple of different directions I'd like to go with this thing. But before we go into that, we appreciate you being on here tonight. Super chats, super stickers are enabled if you'd like to share, help this thing keep rolling. But if you have questions, please put them in all caps. Obviously, super chats and super stickers really flag when we see those. It's hard to see the little questions going through, all the questions that may come through. So if you put them in all caps, it also helps if you're not able to do the super chat or super sticker. So we're going to try and get to a few questions at the end. I'm not sure how many we'll get to, but we're going to try and get there. So please, if you want to ask some questions, put them in all caps, and Brian or I will try to flag them and get them up there, star them, so we can look at them at the end of the chat as we wind this thing down a little bit. But Two directions to go in with the mental gymnastics of beekeeping. Number one, there are two places where decisions really have to be made. One is a place where it has to be made very quickly. The other is a place where you can take your time a little bit. In the bee yard, there are decisions that need to be made. Especially I think for newer beekeepers, and even for me still sometimes, I get in situations to where my mind is just back and forth. Like I see this in front of me. How do I handle this situation? As in any type of sporting event, you have to make decisions and it almost becomes an instinct for you. And that may be kind of similar to beekeepers. As you gain more experience, it becomes almost instinctual what to do. But I guess that's kind of the direction I like to go first. The second direction I like to check in on, guys, is, the mental gymnastics, the decisions like more long term, like how do you decide what you want to do now to set up the next step in beekeeping or set things up for next year. And so those are kind of a couple directions we could go. We could talk all night about either topic. So I guess we'll just kind of rock and roll. And Brian, when you get out in the bee yard, what are some things that you kind of run into where you have to make a quick decision, and kind of how do you handle those situations? We discussed this a little bit last week, but kind of just, I guess, kind of carrying on through with that talk that we had last week. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, when I go out, it depends on, number one, I mean, it just depends on the time of the year according to how I react. Just like the other day, I go out, I open up a colony that is building up, and I find a cell. It's, right then it's like, well, do I have any other colonies that need a queen? You have to look at the overall status of the apiary. And the thing the other day, I mean, I looked, found that cell, went through that colony and found the queen, and she was going around laying. So I'm like, well, okay, they want to replace her for some odd reason. I just moved the cell over and thought, well, let me just start a split. It's July, I think the last video that I filmed, let me see, that one was July 12th when I did that. So, you figure July 12th, and now I have checked that and they made a queen. There's still enough time in with the number of colonies that I have to have an established colony to go into the winter and survive. For right now, my decisions are solely geared towards I need to have strong colonies so that I have an increased survival rate as compared to what I did last year. So I think from what happened with the winter and with the spring so far, it's kind of changed up a little bit of my management in that, I've never used DFM before, so I'm looking at the gut health on them, and I am watching the mites a little bit more closely. I've done more washes this year than what I regularly have. So all of my decisions that I'm making from this point moving on are what can I do and how do I react to make a strong, healthy colony? And that's it. I'm not going to react at this point and set my colonies up to produce fall honey. Everybody knows that I kind of push those limits. I'm normally with supers on until clear into September, and then and then I drop my strips on, and they're, clear through the ending of September, all October, and going into November even. I'm not doing that this year. So I might set up one colony, a strong one, to produce. Just, I figure, hey, if it's a nice strong colony, they've got the foragers and they've got the crew that can produce me. If I get a box of fall honey, it's enough for Tara and myself and a couple other family members that like fall. But that's it. It's I'm hoping at this point, though, that I don't find many colonies with other cells, truthfully. Just I want everything kind of right now. I need everything to just be riding like that calm wave. But it just, like I said, it just depends on the time of the year and really what my end goal is.
Okay. Greg, how about you? You're going through your colonies. I know you got a lot going on right now. What might be a situation you might see in your bee yard right now that would require immediate action of some sort?
We definitely talked about this last week on Brian's stream. But for me, I'm constantly looking at, everything is an asset. Everything has a cycle of growth or a cycle of maturity. For me, when you break it down at the beginning of the year, and you look at each asset, each colony, as the first step is resource assessment. The second step is asset assessment. Once you realize what you have to work with, now you say, okay, what is the growth assessment of this unit? What can it do? What is its greatest, highest use, potential, value? And then you start to put the plan in action for that. And then you, at that point, start to look at, okay, risk assessment. Where is this colony right now? What do I mean by all that? Right now, we're going through and we're pulling queens, we're caging them, we're shipping them, we're dropping queen cells in right behind, right? Or if we've got queen cells that have hatched and they're virgins that are a day or 2 or 3 old, then those are in cages and those are in a virgin bank, and then those get put out and get put into the assets. For me right now, when I'm cracking a lid and I pull a queen and I send her off, I look at the resources left behind. How much cap brood's left? How much brood is there? What size are they? How far can they go? What is the greatest use for this 3 frames of bees? What we do, the mentality that might be a little different than where a lot of folks are, if you're looking at your colonies as when they're in single deeps or double deeps, or they're a story and a half, and you're thinking of winter size, right sizing them for wintertime. But if you take that all the way down to even the micro scale, it's the same exact concept. You're looking at the snapshot right now. What truthfully is this asset? What resource is here, and where can this go moving forward? And when you look at it and you say, hey, this maybe only has one more cycle left in it of queens before that needs combined with other things, or it needs added to another box, or whatever the situation is. The same thing is even on big colonies. But I think I constantly have, it happened yesterday. I'm trying to think of I'm going to date myself and also my ignorance to the Olympics. But you remember back when it had to have been the 90s, when there was the huge Olympic controversy. It seems like there's always something, that gets people fired up. But it was the ice skating thing. I think it was, is it Tanya Harding and what's the other lady's name? The one lady got busted in the knee, and then she was done. I don't know who was who or what did what, but I remember the names. Sometimes I feel like as beekeepers, we have this split personality where we've got 2 ways of problem solving, and you've got the which one did what? Tanya Harding, I think, is she the one that was swung the crowbar?
Yeah, it was
Nancy
Kerrigan, yeah.
So Kerrigan swung the crowbar or whatever that it was. Okay,
Tanya Harding took Nancy Kerrigan out, or tried to.
Okay, it would have been easier for me to remember the other way around. Harding. Okay. Yeah. All right. So bear with me here. So sometimes I've got this Tanya Harding decision-making process, and then I've got the Nancy Kerrigan side. And what do I mean by that? Sometimes I know what I should be doing. I'm out there to perform this thing, right? But then the other half of me is like doubting, and it's questioning, and maybe there's a little bit of uncertainty, or maybe there's a little bit of self-sabotage, or maybe there's a little bit, hey, I can stretch this out. There it is, Brian. Brian's a whiz. I can stretch this thing out just a little bit further. Or you know what? Maybe they'll be okay. Let's just roll the dice and find out. But with enough times of doing that, you automatically know, oh, man, if I let this stretch out just a little bit longer, I don't know if there's going to be enough bees in here to hold it. Or, man, you know what? I should have probably combined this on the last round. Or you go through and you crack open a lid, and guess what? There is no queen in this mating nuke. And all the bees are jittery, and they're running around like crazy, and they're kind of aggravated, and they just start to have that vibe that any second they're going to go into laying workers. They haven't quite yet, but they're almost there, and you're thinking, oof, they've now gone 3 weeks with no fresh brood. All we have is old workers in here. Do I even waste a queen cell on them, knowing that she's going to hatch tomorrow, knowing that she's going to be within 10 days of mating, 21 days from the day she lays before we've got brood hatching? It doesn't look like that resource is actually going to be mature or self-sustaining. So it's time to make those decisions. But then you're like, well, it's just a queen cell. I've got them. It's just a box. And so it's like, you've got the Tanya Harding hitting your other reason or your logical side with a crowbar, and you're sitting there like, oh man, now what do I do? Yesterday, I'm out there and I know I've got to graft. I know I've got to get grafts on. I've got to get queen cells ready to keep up with the pace, because we're not, as much as I want to be done. I absolutely want to be done right now. As much as I want to be done, we're not. We still have a solid month of queen murring left to go. And it is the hardest month of the entire year to be doing this. But that's what we have to do to try to get the growth and to do the things that we really would like to do. And so here I am, and I go out to one of my breeder colonies, and I'm going through, and boy, they're looking beautiful. But we had 4 or 5 days in a row of rain and no forage coming in. And then being Caucasians and this being late in the year, guess what they decided to do? They decided to just brood back during all this weather. They are so tuned in to incoming forage that they just kind of paused, kind of held back, right? And there was a little bit of lapses in laying, meaning I don't have the appropriate grafting material to just snag a beautiful frame out of there, go to my grafting shack, go to town, graft what I needed to. So I didn't have it, all right? It's already getting late in the day. I already should have checked that to start with, and I didn't. So I go to start that. I go to look, and I'm thinking, you know what? I need to make sure I've got everything already lined up and ready to go. I go in, and my headlamp is dead. My other light, all my lights are dead that I use just to be able to check and look. And when I'm grafting, that I use, it turns out nothing was ready. I had went and checked my second breeder to see if I could pull material off of her to graft from, and guess what? Same thing. Those Caucasians are just, to a fault. It's beautiful, but when you don't know what you don't know, and I didn't know that they were going to be so dialed back on brood right now. Like, they're brooding back up, but we have this lapse where I needed that specific age larvae, and it's not there in either colony. Now it's getting late in the day, and now I'm thinking, all right, well, it's already pushing 8 o'clock. The sun's already starting to go down. How much do I want to keep pulling? I'm starting to get a headache. The allergies are starting to kick in. My brain's getting foggy. I hadn't had lunch. It's already 8 o'clock. I'm thinking, okay, the Tanya Harding's coming out, and it is just schwacking me constantly with this crowbar, sabotaging every step that I make. So I said, okay, you know what? I'm gonna call it for tonight. I'm gonna sleep on it. I'm gonna get up first thing in the morning, and I'm gonna make a call. That's what I did. Went home, got dinner, crashed right out, got up, got to the farm early. And as soon as I got to the farm, it was just like the mental gymnastics, because of all of this, the repetitions and all of the cycles and all of the training and all the muscle memory and all the times that we've done this. I woke up the next morning and it was boom, 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 boom. Here's what I do. Here's how I do it. Here's where I look. Here's what I need. Boom, 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 boom. And I went out, and and I don't want to go down the entire VSH road again. That's a long story. But as disappointed as I am with everything as a whole, I mentioned a few weeks back that there was one silver lining queen. There was one out of them all that I was interested in. This morning, I was on fire. Like, I had a beeline from me to them. Like, that was the future for this grass. I went out, cracked the lid, calm as can be. Salt and pepper, dark bees, extremely prolific. And I thought, whoa, there's a certain vibe to this hive that I absolutely love. So I went through, and guess what I found? They were also a little lean, but I found enough grafting material to get like 5 bars in. Okay, great. So here I am. I pull the frame out, brush the bees off, I get them in my towel so I can take them back to the shop and graft them. And as I do it, I also want to know, where are they at with mites right now? So here I am going through there. I have my cup. I'm running it down the frame, collecting it for mites, put it in the wash cup. And then I had this sickening feeling all of a sudden. Wait, was that the queen that I just see fall in that cup that I just closed in there? Did I just put this potential silver line queen? Did she just go for a bath? So I quickly opened up the cup and it's too late. They're done. And so now I go through the box. Okay, I'll just go through the box real quick. Let me just make sure she's there. I'll just feel better about it. Go through the box. Didn't see it. I learned I've got to set boundaries. I do not look for a queen more than twice in a box, and twice is too much. It really should be one pass through a box. If I don't see her, put it back. Well, I'm a little stubborn, so I went through twice. Didn't see the queen. Put the lid back on. They're starting to get a little bit rumbly. I'm thinking, oh man, did I just? So here I am. Now I've got grafting material, potentially the only future hope of continuing this genetic line in my hands with a wash cup. And so I head to the shop. I get them grafted. Like I said, there's only 5 bars. So that's what, 15 times 5, 75 grafts real quick. I do a mite wash. And we just had our inspection. Our county inspector was out. We went through a bunch of colonies. Right now, our entire yard is sitting between 0.7 and 1.6% mites.
Wow.
Beautiful. Not a great place to be in. When I washed some of the VSH colonies, there are 3-4 mites or so in a wash cup. The F1s. When I washed this one, that one that sometimes you just know when you crack the lid, I washed this one, 1 mite and 308 bees. Wow. And the reason I know it was 308 because I'm sorting through trying to find, is my queen in there? No, long story long, DC, is I thank God did not wash the queen. She is somewhere hiding in the corners of that box. But I did not wash the queen. There it is, Bruce. Fireworks. Way to go. Double fireworks. Wow. Look, I'm going for gold here, fellas. So that was a very long story, but it is that kind of thing every single day when you're working bees, is you have a side of you that makes decisions that is a short-term, what do I do in this situation? And the choices that you make is all based on your prior experience. And sometimes if you're not feeling well, if your brain's foggy, or maybe things weren't meant to be that day and that time and that season to do that thing you're trying to push to do, the way things tend to work out when you just trust that feeling is unbelievable. So now we're sitting with, it's only 75, but there's 75 grafts on. They're out in cell builders right now. It's getting late in the season, but we have to be careful that you have to learn and know yourself, that when you find yourself potentially self-sabotaging yourself for the sake of growth or for the sake of pushing forward, and when you recognize that is a really good time to just detach from that situation and reassess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and I'm I'm at that point to where, I was going through those colonies this past weekend, and I'm getting to the point now to where I'm kind of like, I'm just going to combine them. Like I saw that some that were kind of mediocre, and I'll let them go another couple of weeks, but I'm getting better at making those decisions. Whereas I think a lot of people, especially if they're kind of new at beekeeping, might be somewhat paralyzed when they get in that situation. If you're doing anything that requires quick decisions, and you just freeze up, it could be dangerous. And especially like in gymnastics, if you're middle of the air and you just stop, you stop moving, you can just land on your head or whatever. That's actually, for those who may be familiar, if you're not in the Olympics, I understand, but if you are, the Simone Biles girl 4 years ago, I guess they actually did the Olympics in 2021, but she developed a problem, and she's the best gymnast in the world with what they call the twisties. Her brain literally forgot how to work, and her body could not respond. It's almost like what they call the yips in baseball or different sports, where your brain tells you to do it and you just can't. There's no connection. So she had to pull out of most of the events and it took her 2 years to recover from that. And now she's once again on top of the world. So that can definitely happen, I think, in our beekeeping situation too, to where you can freeze up and not know what to do. and you can just end up causing damage to your bees, or you can get behind, or you just kind of, it can be very frustrating and discouraging as well. I think some of the times that are most frustrating for me is, really it happened last year when I made the decision to make all those splits and use those new Michael Palmer queens in an attempt to, and some of your queens as well, Greg, in an attempt to calm my genetics down up in Ozark. And I started going through them, and honestly, instead of making a decision to get in them more, I kind of let them do their thing. I've tried to feed them, but I didn't really get in them and try to figure out. I watched them and they just didn't look super healthy, and just kind of let it rock and roll. And we know I lost most of those colonies through the wintertime, and I'm not sure what I could have done different or should have done it. I still don't know what I should have done differently. The main thing is maybe just not made all those splits without feeding them in late July. Right now, it was like right now last year, like within a week or two of right now, hot. It was miserable. And I didn't, that's the biggest mistake I made, was I just had to get it done quicker. I thought I did. I didn't feed them as I introduced those queens. I think that was a big part of that. And Greg, you'll tell, I mean, I can kind of let out a secret here. I actually texted you this past weekend after I went through them. I said, man, my bees were so mean because, once again, number one, I wasn't using smoke. Number two, there was a storm rolling in. And this, number three, this is the time of year when they're just.
Wait, you weren't using smoke?
No, I didn't use smoke.
Wait, okay. I didn't get that part in the text message.
I started off
lighting up my smoker. Bruce.
Well, I started lighting up my smoker, and I'm like, I'm just cracking the lid. I'm just cracking the lid. So it was all my stupidity. But then I kind of panicked, and I told Greg, I said, man,
it was panicky.
I think I need to make some splits. I need to get some queens. I need to get my genetics calmed down. And Greg's like, well, I kind of like, what do I do? I asked about another queen breeder. I said this and that. And he's like, well, how many do you need? And then I said, man, I'm just not sure what to do. And he said, now, and he just threw a text message. He calmly said, kind of like what happened last year. Why don't you just kind of think about it, let it ride, and we'll just kind of see. And that's what I had decided to do. And so I'm off the cliff a little bit. Greg taught me off the cliff, but that can happen. You can literally get those twisties or the yips or whatever you want to call it, where you just kind of get in that mode to where you're just go, go, go. It's almost like a manic or a bipolar type situation to where you can make decisions. And I'm not saying I'm not going to do anything, but I don't feel like I have to requeen all my bees right now anymore.
Right.
Anyway, but that was kind of a thing that Greg, you helped me, kind of taught me through that a little bit via text the other night. And so we may talk more about that in private, or I don't know, in the future. But
Bruce, what you just mentioned there is really important for everyone who's listening here. Not necessarily, I mean, not just the details of the conversation and the lesson learned there, but I firmly believe that we are the sum of those we surround ourselves with. And I think it's really important to have folks that got your back. They're in your corner. They want to see you do well, but they're not afraid to shoot straight with you. Not that they're trying to hurt your feelings, but you know, one of the really hard things when anyone looks at a friend or someone in a circle as being successful, or they put them on this ridiculous pedestal, a lot of times what you'll see is nothing but a bunch of yes men. It's you're awesome, you're great, yes, you do, like, you know, what you need is people who care so much for you that they're not afraid to hurt your feelings and telling you the truth. And so I get it. We've all been in that place where Tanya Harding creeps out and she says, you know what you need to do? You need 140 queens. You need them tomorrow. Just go do this. Just go split them out. Just make it happen. And you're like, oh, and you're stuck in this. I mean, you are on this rail, and it is fast paced, right? Like sometimes you need someone just to literally slam on the brakes in a kind, respectful way and say, hey, what about da 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 da? And then it's just enough for you to say, well, you know, because you've already told yourself that. Exactly what I told Bruce. He already knew that. He already told himself that. But he's got the Kerrigan Hardin thing going on, and he's just da 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 da. Right? I mean, we all go, but you got to have folks in your circle who you trust, who you can communicate with, that you're not afraid to share with, and then go back and forth and respect that opinion.
Well, part of it too is, you know, I do see some of these, you know, it's a difficult time of year. So I begin to see, and I know better than this, but I begin to see some hives that are struggling a little bit. Like, well, what if they die out in the wintertime? What if I don't have enough bees? And I'm going to have enough bees unless something just catastrophic happens. I'll have enough bees going into spring. So anyway, we're 42 minutes in, and that's kind of, I think, a pretty good little segue I think that's some really good information as far as when you get out in the bee yard. I think, Greg, what you mentioned about just, whenever you're going to buy, make a big purchase, it's always you hear people say there's a couple different sides of making a purchase. You got the salesman, and you have the customer. And the salespeople, like I've heard this, I've never worked at a car dealership, but I've heard that in the car dealership, they're really pressure packed lots of times because they know if you leave and you go sleep on it, you might change your mind. However, as a consumer, it's always a good idea with a big purchase or really any purchase of significance to just do your research and check it out. If you go to the dealership or if you go look at something, a house, whatever it is, sleep on it. And that's the exact principle that you use. Sometimes you can get so emotionally involved or wrapped up in something, or you can get so committed to a cause or to a decision that you don't make the best decision. And so, if you walk out of that car dealership or if you walk out of the bee yard, you go home and you sleep on it, you think about it, you wake up the next morning, many times, as you said, Greg, you can go back into the situation almost with you can go back into the situation with some inspiration, whether it be from above or your mind is just resting, you've had more time to think through it, and then you'll make the right decisions. Sometimes you're going to make that purchase. Sometimes you're going to go ahead with your initial plan. And sometimes you just realize, hey, I just need to keep looking for something else and do something different. And so that, I think, there's a lot of wisdom in that. I've had that happen to me before where I've been out in the bee yard and sometimes it's out of necessity. If I get over really hot or something, if it's super hot and I just can't handle it physically, I'll just leave sometimes. And the interesting thing is when I go back, the bees are still there, I can still go ahead and do whatever needs to be done, or even if I change my decision. Let's look, I lost Brian there for a minute. So that's some really good stuff, Greg. And I appreciate that. Maybe we could move into, and we do have some questions, guys. The ones especially you put in all caps, we were trying to star those. So we will address those here in a little bit towards the end of the probably the last few minutes of the chat tonight. But maybe we could take a little time, Greg, and talk about some of those mental gymnastics that happen from a more long-term standpoint, like what to do, how to determine what you want to do in the future. And I think this is something that everyone, even if you're still in your middle of your season, 2024 is beginning to move downhill a little bit. It's moving towards the end of the year. And even if you're still in that season, it's coming to a close. It's getting shorter. And the prime season for beekeeping is beginning to wind down for 2024. And many people, at least here in the South and maybe up there too, say that beekeeping season begins in August. And so we are right here. Tomorrow is August. So I guess the question is, mental gymnastics, these things don't have to happen near as quickly. But what are some things, my mind tends to, like, just right now, I'm like the squirrel in Ice Age. I'm kind of like all over the place with what I'm saying right now, back and forth. That's kind of what my mind does lots of times. And that's kind of what I'm talking about by those mental gymnastics, where it's kind of like ping pong or tennis, where your head's back and forth. And it's hard to make that decision. I kind of go from one extreme to the other. So I think when you're in the bee yard dealing with a couple of colonies, it's one thing, but when you're talking about your entire operation, whether you're a hobbyist or sideline or a commercial beekeeper, you're talking about the future. What are some key ingredients that need to go into that decision making to help you make a solid decision for the future? Brian, what do you think about that?
Hang on one second. All I'm hearing is like sputter, and my connection is
okay. We'll let Greg address it. Go ahead, Greg. What do you think about looking into the future?
Yeah, let me know if I'm breaking up or garbly. It looks like my feed tonight's I'm getting about every other word there, but
now we can hear you great. I can hear you great,
okay.
Greg. So yeah.
All right, good. I think with decision making, there's probably some really smart outlines for this. But in my mind, when I think of decision making, is there are certain times where if the decision that you make doesn't go as intended, there's less risk or consequence. And that's when you're in the beginning of the season, when you're in a flow and the bees are brooding and there is so much abundance out there and you've got the entire season ahead as a buffer in your mind and physically you do. When you get later and later in the season, like right now, if you're in a situation in late July, going into August, and you're not queen right, or they're not brooding, or something's not quite right, or you're going into repair mode, or you're in reassessment mode, you don't have a lot of time to get things back on track. Now, we do make splits clear up until November. Those are downsizing splits. Those are breaking down colonies that are too big for what I like for wintertime. And we're going through mating nukes and snagging up all the rest of the queens and then requeening for wintertime. That is not an average beekeeper's mode of operation. That's not what they do. But as you're getting later and later in the year, at some point you have to just make a call. You just have to make a decision and go with it. And the hard part is, if you're with, especially if this is your second or third year of beekeeping, this is probably the most challenging time to make decisions, I think, is that third year beekeeper, because the third year beekeeper has 2 years of experience under their belt, which to them seems like an enormous amount of time, right? You've already gotten by with doing something a certain way, and maybe it worked, or maybe you thought it worked. The third year beekeeper goes to make these decisions that they are feeling very confident about. And this is one of those ask me how I know scenarios. You go into that third season, you make the call based on your last 2 years experience. You make the call maybe based on your opinion. Maybe you make the call based on the ideals that you're projecting for yourself and your bees. And you don't know the outcome until December, January, February, and March. And so a lot of times we can only make a decision right now based on the experience and based.
Uh-oh. We lost you there, Greg. We lost you, Greg. Can you hear me?
You there? Can you hear me now?
We lost you. So you can only make a decision based on your experience, and then you cut out on us.
Based on your experience and wisdom from your journey up to the certain point. And you've got to go making decisions knowing that, okay, I'm going to make my best call, and then we're going to learn from it. But as soon as you can free yourself to say, hey, you know what? All I can do is make the best call, put the best foot forward, and we're going to learn from it either way. It actually frees you up to go ahead and make the call. Sometimes, Bruce, we can find ourselves in that go moment, right? The flare gun just went off, and now we're starting to race. You overthink every little thing, lane change, and do this, and do I fast now, slow now? What all these things that you overthink, that it can actually be so exhausting.
Oh, froze up again.
They're shutting down the Ohio beekeepers.
They must
They don't
be.
want us to talk.
Greg, we lost you.
Go ahead. Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, Brian,
maybe my feed will catch up.
Once again, long-term decisions, mental gymnastics, kind of what do you look at to look for the future, towards the future?
You know, looking towards the future, you're not going to do what I did the other day. And I did say in chat what I did, but having to make decisions like right on the spot, I had one of those. I mean, it's just like it's almost like you were saying about, when you're going through your routine and you kind of hit that moment where you get whatever they said it was, the twisties or something like that. I made probably the most rookie mistake the other day, just going through and thinking everything is smooth sailing, and I find a new queen in a colony, and I go to catch her in. I have no idea why I don't just make the jump and just grab them and mark them, because I've done it. I did it when I was out in California. Other than when I come home, I don't, and I use my one-handed queen catcher. So I proceed that, hey, I'm going to mark this queen. Nice, juicy looking queen. And that is until when I go down with the one-handed queen catcher and there's all kind of bees in it. And when I lift it up and I slide the thing up, I see her head in the slide and her body does that instant curl like this, and she's shaking. And I thought, well, that kind of sucks.
Yeah.
But instant decision there is, the colony was large. I could have gone over, I could move the queen over from that resource colony. She's a mated queen, so really there wouldn't be that much of a lag. But the decision for me was leave that queen over there because I can let that develop into another colony if I'd like, or if I need later on, I can move it over. That colony with that queen where I messed up was one of my larger colonies. So they have a population where if there's a little bit of a lag, I'll let them make a queen. They'll still it'll be a daughter. It's a fantastic colony. So it's just those decisions that you have to make like on the spot like that, yeah, I mean, every day working in the apiary isn't always a bed of roses, but it happens, we all get the twisties and we all get the bends and we all have rookie mistakes,
Yeah. One thing that I would, something I've learned over the years, and I saw someone in the comment here, there's been some comments on what we're talking about. And one person, I can't remember where it was. Oh, it's EL says, heck, I'm a second-year beekeeper. Let's just pull it up here.
Oh, yeah.
Oops, that's the wrong one. Where is it? There it is. I'm still trying to figure out technology after 2.5 years or longer. Heck, I'm in my second year, and I guarantee I don't know everything. Every time I turn around, there's another challenge or plot twist in my apiary. David Burns is right. Beekeeping's a challenge, and that ain't that the truth? And so, so that's just what you have to do. You have to get in the bees. You have to try things, do things, learn things, and then just assess what the results are, and then self-correct next time. If it works, then try it again, maybe. And if you like what happens, the results, then continue with that. And then as you find things that don't work or that you don't like the results of, then just eliminate those things. It's as if it's just like any other hobby or task that you're trying to perform. It gets a little easier over time. The interesting thing about bees, though, is every colony is so different that it's just, you think you got something figured out, and then you get a completely different genetic line in there, or something happens, and there's a weird year there's a weird year with the weather even, and it's just like everything's different. Like you're ahead of last year or you're behind last year, and it just can be just crazy. And so that's one thing that I love about beekeeping is the challenge of it, but also makes me want to pull my last 2 hairs out. So as far as I'm concerned with long-term decisions, I kind of try to base it on, initially my thought process was I just want to grow. And I think many people have that goal. Many people are like, my goal initially was I want to get 100 hives. That was almost from day one. And now I've had 100 hives up and down. I kind of stay around that number as an average. I go a little bit over. I'm a little over now, but that's just kind of become my sweet spot of what I can kind of handle pretty decently. I think I'm up around 130, 140 now, but 100 colonies is a really kind of a good or a large number. It's a good number for me. But that's kind of the first thing I think a lot of people want to do is just grow. And you have to, once again, develop that wisdom to know, first of all, what you need to do in order to grow at a reasonable pace. And second of all, do you really want to grow that big? And so, it's all the things to consider, the purchasing of equipment, and all these things are things we can talk about for another chat. But those big decisions I think we're making right now for 2025, with the bees themselves and also with equipment needs and things like that. Those are things you have to assess as time goes on. I think one thing, Greg and Brian, I think you both agree with, is that right now is the time to build your bees up for 2025. Get them ready for winter, make sure they're healthy, get the mite loads down, and just try to go into the winter time with healthy bees. I think that applies whether you live here in Alabama, here in the South, where we don't ever get a true long-term winter, or whether it's you guys up there that get weeks, if not months of winter. It's time now to prepare for next year. And those are the decisions that have to be made. And as you gain experience, you'll know better how to do that in your individual location. I'd like to go ahead maybe and shift into some questions. We have a few here. And I see a lot of people that I recognize here in the chat. A lot of people there's a couple I haven't ever seen before, I think, or haven't recognized. And there's a lot in here that we usually have or that we've had a lot of times. We appreciate you all being in here in the chat. And, I see Glade in here from Utah. Just so many people. Russell from up north. I think he's in Minnesota, and he's come in my videos almost from when I started YouTube years and years ago. And Jonathan Bennett, so many people, I can't name everybody. Got Hamburg Honey in here, VIA honeybees. Gosh, I don't want to leave somebody out. Brian from Flower Street, Jonathan Bennett. So anyway, Spirit of Toe, we got Eric in here. He's asked a couple of questions. We're going to go ahead and hit some of those now. So before we do that, I'd like to go ahead and just hit the super chats. Thanks all those who have given us some super chats tonight. It really helps out. Brian, thank you for that. Stream Team, Gymnastics Team 2024. Freedom Apiaries, thanks for the $20 super sticker, super chat there. Redfish, thanks so much. You've been a follower of the channel, of my channel, and also of the stream team here for a long time. We really appreciate you. He's from not far from me down here. And then we have Greg. I certainly appreciate it. No paint, no rot, no hassle. What does that stand for? Endura Hive wax dip boxes. So I'm going to get more of those one of these days when I need some. I think that's going to be my direction. I'm going to go with my boxes as I continue to cycle some of mine out. I'm going to try and move in that direction. So let's start off with a few of these questions. We're going to try and kind of go rapid fire on these guys because we got a few and we don't want it to drag out. We'd like to get to all of them if we could. Let's start off with John Rollins. He says, Greg, the queens are doing great. I would like to ask you how you feel about Buckfast queens.
John, thanks for your order for the queens and everyone else who ordered that we've been busy shipping out. How do I feel about Buckfast? Well, that's a long story. Don't have time, but here's what I'll say. Our initial line of Nature's Image queens were largely based on a beautiful swarm that we caught when we nearly had hit our Dunninger curve of ignorance. And after all of our bees were nearly dead, this beautiful swarm moved in, and the certain coloration and type of bee that was, I believe, came from the forest that the current farm is on now. And when you research that coloration and the marking, they actually look a lot like Buckfast, and they actually act a lot like Buckfast. So what I think that we've actually put together, without me doing a genetic test, it's really hard to know that. But I have never ran Buckfast. I've never had Buckfast queens or Buckfast nukes to really know anything about that. But if our backline was built on some kind of Buckfast mongrel, which is possible, I love what I've seen from that. But I don't have any personal experience with buying anything that had Buckfast in it and knowing.
Yeah, I don't know much about them either. I know a lot of people like them. I hear the name tossed about, but I've never had any that I knew were officially Buckfast bees either. But they're probably good bees, I don't know though. Brian, any thoughts on that?
Buckfast?
Yeah.
I've never messed with them.
Okay. Let's roll on to the next question here. This is from Wesley Bryant. What do you guys think of peppermint candies to combat small hive beetles?
Brian, what do you think?
Yeah, I can go first with that one. I really do not have a small hive beetle problem up here. I will literally go through my apiary, and like the other day when I went through it, I went through, 11 or whatever colonies, and I think I saw like 5 or 6 small hive beetles across the entire apiary. So I don't have a problem really that warrants any type of treatment.
We're about in the same boat, Bruce. This year we've probably seen, a handful of hive beetles this year. And it's not a big deal. It's not, however, in the past it has been, and we did try peppermint candies. And to me, it was, you're just absolutely chasing your tail. The candies themselves seem to be counterintuitive because they're gone within a day or so. And so to have that much peppermint circulating in the colony to keep hive beetles away, I don't know that makes a whole lot of sense, but peppermint oil applied in a way that's going to be within the colony for a little bit longer of a release, I think that actually makes a lot of sense. So if I was going to do something, I would want to make sure, like when we used to make up murder sauce, it had it had different oils in it, and it actually, those oils were there for a little bit longer of a period. And I think that makes a big deal. And I think that helps. But I think the peppermint 100% does work. I think finding the appropriate peppermint application for you is the thing to consider. Bruce, what do you think?
I've used it a little bit, and I don't know if it worked or not. I was unable to be consistent enough with it to see. I mean, when I used it, I didn't have a lot of beetles, but I'm not sure if it was hive beetle season really.
Yeah.
And so I don't say it doesn't work, and I don't say it does. I haven't had enough experience with it. It's just hard. Theoretically, I think technically, and tell me if I'm wrong, Brian, you guys may know, Greg, but I think you're supposed to put, peppermint in each box all the way through the colony, like once a week or once every 2 weeks or something. And I just can't.
There's no way.
I can't do that. I can't break my colonies down. So I've sprinkled on the top a few times. I don't know. I've got other methods that I utilize that work pretty well. I think, like I said, I don't think it's a bad thing to do. I just have not been able to I've got a whole bag of peppermint candies down in the garage. I just haven't been able to get them in the hives. I just can't seem to do it. So, but I think if you got just a few colonies and if it's something you want to try, it definitely isn't going to hurt anything.
No, not going to hurt anything.
You kind of have to do your own study. Do it, and you have to do it year after year after year and see, because some years just aren't as bad as others.
Right.
It's just really hard to know, but some people swear by it, and by all means, if you think it works and if you feel like it works for you, then it's not going to hurt anything.
If anything, you'll have beautiful breath.
Yeah.
But also, though, I mean, if you are trying something like that, don't just because you have seen something from a content creator or you've heard a whisper here and there, don't just think it's a magic bullet and it's going to cure everything, because you're going to walk out there and you're literally going to risk if you are in an area where small hive beetles are a problem, you could risk your apiary because you're going to walk out and put little peppermint candies in the corners and think that it's that magical silver bullet and walk away and go back, and you might have an issue. So still put in the time and check, because if it hits like critical mass and your small hive beetles are, if the peppermint candies are not helping, you still have to be able to react. So put in the time and still check.
And also be mindful too, because if you've got 10 or 12 colonies and you think you've got a hive beetle issue because you see 5 when you open up your top cover and you see them running on the lid there, like, don't freak out. It's when you see larvae and you see the squigglies and you see more than 5 or 6 on a lid, I think that's when you have problems. But be mindful, because it seems as though hive beetles get worse later in the year. If you're getting later in the year and you're in a dearth, the last thing you probably want to do is be cracking all of your boxes to drop a candy in each corner to put them all back. Hive beetles are going to be the least of your worries, I think, at that point. You may set off a robbing scenario, likes of which have never been seen. Right, Brian?
It'd be a fantastic robbing scenario, a wonderful robbing scenario.
Everyone will say how great it is.
It would be such a magical buzz of a robbing scenario.
I've heard of theories of if you open all of your colonies up at once during a robbing frenzy, what happens, and I'm not going to present that here, but I've heard that it actually, I'm not going to talk about it. That's something we'll talk about another time maybe. As far as hive beetles go, we have a huge problem. I've lost many colonies. I've had a lot of hive beetle issues over the years. And just a couple of quick little things that I use. Number one, someone mentioned in the comments, Swiffer sheets. I think those are good. I use it's called a Dixie. I think they're called H470 or H740 towels, Dixie disposable towels you can get. And they work really well. I rip them in thirds or fourths lengthways and lay them from the front to the back of the colonies. If it's a real problem, you can put it in all the boxes, or you can just stick it under the top lid. If you got a hive beetle problem, those things, it's the same principle as Swiffer sheets. Stan Gore actually folds them up and puts them in the corners of his colonies. Same type thing. The beetles get caught in them and they can't get out. Another thing is the beetle splashers. I've used a lot of those. Various baits you can use. The recommended is oil, vegetable oil, or I guess whatever mineral oil, whatever kind of oil in there. Don't fill them up more than about halfway full though, because if you spill that oil on your bees, it kills them instantly. Stan Gore uses diatomaceous earth, and there's just different things you can use, and I'm not going to talk about. I'll just leave it there. And then another thing I've been doing this year, I've been really diligent about is putting Grobex. Some local Alabama, at least one local Alabama commercial beekeeper down here swears by that. He started doing it, I guess, a year or two ago, and just spreading it every so often around all the colonies in the ground. And the Grobex, the active ingredient in Grobex is not, supposedly it's not, doesn't hurt the bees, and they don't get in it anyway because it's on the ground. And when the larvae, I guess theoretically, when the larvae drop out of the colonies, if the hive beetles are trying to reproduce, it kills them. And he's had tremendous results. And this year, I have not seen as many hive beetles. I've done it. I've treated probably 3 or 4 times this year. And I don't know if it's because of that. I don't know if it's because it's just been a good year. I don't know if it's just hasn't hit me yet in full force, but we're watching them close. And I'll probably try to do a video if I can in the next few weeks. I just don't have a lot of time to do videos right now, but I may try to do something on hive beetles here soon with the different treatments I use and the different options out there for you. And I've never tried the diatomaceous earth and the beetle blasters before, but Stan Gore swears by that. I may try that and see what happens. It cuts the beetles up pretty bad and kills them. So he uses the agricultural, whatever it's called, not the food grade or whatever it is. He uses the other kind that you use in your gardening type diatomaceous earth. It's not white. It's like a kind of a brownish color. That's what he uses. So I don't know if it's a little less expensive or if it's just better. I don't know. That's what he uses. So that's a little bit of discussion on hive beetles. We may talk about those more as the summer goes on. Next question here we have, let's see, Thomas Plummer. And the next couple of questions are going to be involve heat, fooling with bees in the heat. I've been jumping through fiery hoops with 100-degree temps for the last 20 days and forecast for at least 10 more days. I'm wanting to treat for mites. What should a beekeeper do? Either one of you guys. Take it, Greg. Go ahead. If it's really hot, what do you do?
I'm putting a lot of thoughts together right now for a podcast called Between a Rock and a Mite Place because of this exactly thing. It's mental gymnastics constantly this time of year because of the temperatures. You talk about Formic Pro, you really have a heat threshold of 85 degrees for the first 3 days. Get any hotter than that, you're really risking it. Getting to 85, you're still risking it without extra ventilation. Do you have enough airflow on the bottom board? When you talk about ApiGuard, while ApiGuard is safe up to 105 degrees, if you notice in the instructions, however, it indicates, however, when temperatures exceed 77 degrees Fahrenheit, that a lower dose of 25 grams can be used successfully. Now, they don't come out and say, when you're warmer than 77, use a lower dose. They're saying if it's warmer than 77, you can use a lower dose. So to me, it's saying it without saying it. I have had problems using ApiGuard when it's too hot, and it can run colonies out. And you're getting into, gosh, can you imagine on a standard ApiGuard dose, if you're running 50 grams and then 50 grams 12 or 14 days later? I mean, who has time to go into their colony 4 times to put in ApiGuard gel? Ain't nobody got time for that. So it puts you into a scenario where really what's left? Are you going to use Apivar? This is where we all draw our own line in the sand. I 100% do not use Apivar and don't plan on using Apivar ever. We try to stick within the organic compound arena for mites, and it's working. We're going to stay there without the need to go to synthetic. More on that some other day. So for now, what we're doing is we're going through and looking, and yes, OA is not going to get behind the brood cappings, but you're safe at 100 degrees to keep your numbers static. If you want to get in there every 4 days, it takes you 45 seconds to go through with OA. You want to do that once or twice to keep things pinned back a little bit. I have seen that actually does work until the temps are more appropriate to put a better treatment on.
So, question though, if for ApiGuard, what is the upper threshold? 100?
105 is the imprint threshold.
Okay. The bees will, I mean, not unless I'm way off. I mean, the bees aren't going to let that colony, like I've seen in some comments, 112 and stuff like that. They're going to manage the internal temp of the colony. So
yes and no. That's not necessarily true, because when the temperatures outside get above 92 degrees, they have to try to compensate. Just because the
Right.
bees have a fanning mechanism doesn't mean that they can actually keep the inside of that colony always at 92, which is why queen rearing and high temps late in the season is so challenging, because they just don't function the same on the inside. Bees are on the out front, they're leaving the colony, they're out front,
Yeah.
or they're shutting down shutting down the work on the inside to a certain point. So I think when the outside temp reaches a certain threshold, it crosses over a metric or a line that we don't fully know and understand on how effective treatments are, but also how quick that they're how the time release is sped up because of the high temps. Maybe it has something to do with high humidities too.
Mm-hmm.
It's a moving target, but it's in print. And what I can say is we've definitely seen issues when it's hotter than 85 using either one of those. It can be really challenging. That's a really long story long, and more on that later too.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can probably address some
Huh.
Mite questions here going forward. But I personally, I use Apivar. It works great. I've never had issues with it at all. I know there is a concern some people have about buildup in the comb. I know Apistan and Mite Check. What was it called? Mite something. Check Mite. I know have a
Checkmate.
history of having some issues with
Yeah,
buildup in the comb,
Kumafos.
but
Yeah.
as far as Apivar goes, I have had just tremendous results. A lot of people say that Apivar / Amitraz based products, that bees are becoming resistant to that. And that is true, I think, in some areas. However, the Rogan, if you watch my video from a few weeks back from the Auburn Bee Lab, came and did studies. They're doing a study to check for Apivar or Amitraz resistance. They're using Apivar strips. And it's a really cool study they're doing, and they're checking bees all throughout the state of Alabama to see if there is really a resistance to the bees here in the state. Mostly it's with large sideline commercial people. They have to have a minimum of 10 colonies randomly that they can select for their study. And my bees had a 95% efficacy, which is well above the threshold for it to be efficient. And so it still is killing my mites. And I thought that was a pretty cool study. So I'm interested to see what happens when I pull the Apivar strips out here in a couple of weeks and do some mite washes on those same colonies to see if my results are the same as what they got with their testing. And so I also like OAV. That's kind of my next thing that I like. I tried Formic, and I didn't have the issues with loss that a lot of people say, but it didn't really knock the mites back as well as I had hoped either. I did it in the spring on some of my colonies that were a little bit weak, and then I did it in the fall last year, which was not a great idea. I think for one reason it didn't have a great result for one. Number two, I mean, it did kill the mites, but it didn't knock them way down below the threshold like I had hoped. So then I cleaned them up with oxalic acid vapor after that, because I wanted to clean them up a little bit more. But it does, the Formic, it knocks them back. Like, she quits laying. A lot of queens will quit laying for a few days there, and it's pretty harsh on the brood that's in there. Now they come back laying with a vengeance, it seems like, but if it's too late in the year, you may not want that to happen. If you want that, that's okay, but you got to be careful. It was well within temperature thresholds. It was on in the fall, and my favorite two treatments are at this point in time Apivar and OAV. I tried Apigar one year, and I did it once again in the fall, which was not the best time to do it. It was hot. I did the half doses, and it worked for the mites. But the bees, they did kind of, it weakened them. They brooded back. The queen kind of shut the queens down for a few days, and I guess October, November is not the best time to be doing that. And so I learned my lesson there. It's just difficult here because by the time in the late winter and early spring, by the time that you really want to treat, it's just like it becomes a new year, and then boom, you're into bee season. So it's hard to put a treatment that, because you're wanting to make split. It's just hard OAV is easy to do that because you can throw a OAV vaporizer in there anytime, but everything else is just kind of hard to do. And so, but in the heat, Apivar, I've just had, it's like the bees just doesn't affect them at all. And then, but it just murders the mites, at least in my experience. Last year, I think I had 0 and 1 mite in every colony I had Apivar in last year. And after I treated them, so it just absolutely knocked them back. And so people say Apivar doesn't work. Well, I'm going to tell you, my experience has been that it does. Let's go ahead and move on to the next question. That is a great question, though, and that is a dilemma that so many beekeepers have here in probably all over the world, but here in the United States, it gets hot in the summer in many parts of the country. It's very difficult to deal with that. Next question, and this is from Spirit of Toad. This is Eric over here. He's actually helped me with my bees before. There are actually, I tell you what. Let's start with this question first. I need to keep queens on hand all the time. So is it too hot to graft? And then here's the next question. Can you legit do grafting with a 113 degree heat index? Now that typically around here, that means mid to upper 90s with a high humidity. It might be pushing 100 upper 90s with a high humidity. So Greg, what are your thoughts on grafting in extreme heat?
Well, if the bees are on the outside of the box, probably not an ideal situation if you need them on the inside to be tending to the grafts. Right now, it was probably 94, 95 today. I don't know. I really struggle with what the heat indexes and the actual heats, and I just what does it tell me it is in Fahrenheit? So we can graft in the mid 90s, but maybe we don't have as much humidity. Maybe I'm not sure what the deal is. What I can say is though is we'll have to talk more about it later, but we're starting to put together mechanically some things in place to help keep those starters a little cooler. We can only do so much with where a lot of the starters at, and the way our starters are, we could definitely do better and be more intentional with that. But can you do legit grafting at 113? I think I would give it a try, but I would cut the grafts way back. I would maybe only put a bar of 15 in and see what they do. I think you either have to have you don't necessarily have to have extremely strong a number of bees in a cell starter for it to work. You do if you want to pull 45 or 90 grafts in a cell starter, but you can always dial that back and put 15 or 30 grafts at them and see what they do, and then start to adjust the size of your starter and what you need moving forward from there. Ideally, if it's for your own personal use, get those queens made earlier in the year, get them in grow out boxes, let them cruise, let them build up, and then snag them throughout the year as they go and move those resources on. And there's a lot less risk, I think, with that. But you got to know when to hold them and when to fold them. And when it gets that hot, Spirit of Toad, I think you might be pushing it. But try out one bar of 15, see what they do.
Okay, sounds like wise advice to me. Let's see, we're getting there. All right, here's one. And I had my first experience with that this year, really. Well, my second experience with it. But Greg, what do you think? And what do you think about wing clipping your queens?
I mean, next year when we start sending out breeder queens, we will probably have that as an option. For everything else, the only time I've got clipped queens is on queens that are AI queens. Outside of that, I just don't. If I've got a queen that leaves a colony, clipping her wing, with chickens and turkeys, we definitely have to do that sometimes because no matter what we wanted, they always want to fly over the poultry netting. That's a different scenario. When queens leave a colony, sometimes there's some underlying thing going on, and I think that is what you spend the time to get to the bottom of. Queens that just want to leave. Are we talking about swarming? Are we talking about absconding? Are we talking about the thing that nobody likes to talk about is it possible that queens actually go out on more than one mating flight? I say yes. I think it is possible. If that's the case, then you wouldn't want to clip too early. There's a lot more about that, Bruce, but what do I think about it? I think it's a tool. If you need to keep a queen in a box or keep her pinned back, great. But guess what? If I would be more concerned about putting a queen excluder over the entrance if this is a breeder queen than I would be clipping the wing. You'd probably want to do both, but what are you going to do? Are you going to be there without if you don't have an excluder there and you have a clipped wing, are you going to be there babysitting that box at all hours of every day to see if just because her wing's clipped doesn't mean she's not going to try to leave? Are you going to be there to see her when she's on the ground out in front or she's gallivanting around the bee yard? Either way, it's probably going to be a loss. So maybe focus in on keeping her in the box more so than protecting her from the ability to leave. I'd rather see that queen leave and go swarm and hit the trees and have a chance of being out somewhere else, seeding your area with drones than I would be trying to keep her there. That's just me.
Interesting story, and I know we're kind of running late here, but I got some queens from Hawaii this year earlier in the spring, and they were clipped. And the craziest thing was I had a swarm in a box, and it was probably it was pretty quickly after I got them. I think they grew up so fast and swarmed, but it was probably 20, 15, 20 yards away. And I'll be darned if that swarm didn't have one of those queens in there. I'm not sure how she got there. It was just a box I had sitting on a pallet, a little nuke sitting up there to catch a swarm in case there was one that came in there. Sure enough, there she was, and it was marked and it was clipped, so it had to be her. I don't know how they got there, but you just never know. You already answered the question from Jonathan Bennett here a little bit about how late do you do queens. You're about done with that, right? About a month left at that. You're going to be doing queens, right, Greg?
Right. Yeah. Well, for here, we've got at least four more rounds. It'll put us over 2,000 grafts. We'll be doing that clear through August, so we can have queens in that by the end of September.
Okay. Quick question from Russell Koopman. Bruce, is Big Red still laying? Short answer is I'm not sure, but my guess is that she has been superseded. I put the simple comb box on that colony. They were so strong back in May, and then I went and checked them a week later, and they were all crazy. There were queen cells in the bottom box. Didn't see a queen. So my guess is they superseded her. Now the hive is looking strong, and I haven't gone through them enough to find a queen, but I will probably do that when I pull strips. So I'll probably just really try. I might just do a video on that and just go in and see if she's still in there. That would be something people will want to know, I think. I really don't know for sure. I think she probably got superseded. I mean, there's no telling how many tens of thousands of eggs she laid there. That was a very strong colony, but they were nasty mean. I guess she was mad at me for marking her so bad. What is your capacity to produce wax-tipped Endura hive bodies, Greg? What is your capacity?
As many as you want. On a semi-load, we can do 30 skids. If they're sideways, there's 70 boxes, 70 deeps to a skid. So, I mean, whatever you need, we can do. We dip semi-loads. We've got a load getting ready to leave to go back to Sioux Falls, South Dakota for premiere. So whether you need one box, one skid, or one semi-load, we have the ability and capacity and velocity to do that consistently.
Wow, that's amazing. Maybe I'll get a skid from you one of these days, Greg. This is a personal question. Real quick, I'll answer it. I drove through Dothan last week, and I'll be driving back through. Do you have honey for sale at any stores in the area? Edie Cook 77. Just email me at the email is bruce@brucesbees.com. Bruce@brucesbees.com, and I'll get back in touch with you on that. This is interesting, and we're just about done here. I've been in discussion with we had Bracken Barker from Barker's Bees and Honey out in Utah, and we had Glade on here a couple of weeks ago. Last time I did a video, a stream, and Glade checked in and he said mid to upper 90s for the last couple of weeks, lows 50 to 55. That's how Utah is. Utah gets cold at night. It's basically the desert, right? So it's been worse down where Bracken's at. Bracken says it's been triple digits during the daytime, but it'll be like 50, 55 degrees at night. And so he wake up and he has to get out in his bees. It'll be like 60 degrees out there, but by noon or 1 o'clock in the afternoon, it'll be 100 plus degrees. And so they definitely go on a roller coaster ride out there when it comes to temperatures in the summertime. And I think we'll wrap it up with this question right here. I know let's see. Actually, let's go ahead and we'll put, Brian, can you put that last question for Greg up there from Eric Holbrook? Just a quick question just to help you with your business, Greg, a little bit maybe. Do you have it there handy? Greg, I have a hive that is having a rough go with small hive beetles. The queen isn't the greatest. I'd like to buy one from you going for spring 25. How can I get in touch with you to buy one?
Well, thanks for considering us for your queens. The demand for our queens are greater than our ability to be able to produce them. What that means for next year is how we take queen orders and how we schedule are going to probably look a lot different. For right now, I would say go to our website, naturesimagefarm.com, go to the contact us, shoot us a message. We hope to be able to compile all those. You're going to see kind of a little different way to order queens for next year. They're not going to be a great public offered number of queens. We're going to have to go back to someone has to die or give up their spot to get on the queen list, but we're going to wait to see what things are looking like for next year. So in short, shoot us an email for now. Stay tuned to our website and the Stream Team chats as we get closer to like November, December, when we start to get folks on those lists. But quick thanks to everybody who has ordered queens from us this year. We love you guys. We appreciate you. We're so excited to get our queens out to your apiaries. Literally, guys, we're shipping queens to all corners of the country. I just went out clear up to Washington State, all the way down to Florida, Texas, all the corners, even up into Vermont and Maine. It's beautiful. I love it. I'm really excited to see what those queen lines do for folks. We've got a couple new things that we're doing with queen lines that we're going to be working on. They're going to be available next year. But the main thing to look out for us for next year is breeder queens. We want folks to be able to take these queens, take them back to their places, get them established, and then make their own 10 or 20 or 100 queens for their own operations, for their customers, have those available for them next year. So a lot of our focus is probably going to go to, it might go to strictly breeder queen qualities and less of the $40 open mated queen. But stay tuned. We'll talk more about that later as we kind of see the path forward. But we appreciate you guys so much.
All right, one more question here, and this is an interesting question. I've never heard this question before, and I think it'll be a quick answer. Please settle a debate. Can you feed candy corn to bees, and why not?
I mean, what's candy corn? Someone pull up an ingredient list. High fructose corn syrup,
sugar,
food coloring, maybe there's some kind of a binder. There's probably citric acid to keep it from spoiling. It's literally probably like Code Red Mountain Dew. And I guarantee you the bees hit the Code Red Mountain Dew in the ballpark, they would probably eat candy corn. However, there is probably something like sodium benzoate or other additives and preservatives that are in candy corn that if you're trying to melt that and thin that and put it into a syrup, that might cause the squirts, is what I would think. It's one thing if they're feeding on something like a high fructose, like pop, or if you're one of those people who call it soda, I won't hold it against you. But if it's a can of pop that the honeybees are drinking, I think they metabolize that differently than if it's a solid, or if it's a solid that is then liquefied. I think it would probably give them the squirts, but we'd have to have an ingredient list to see. It is. Sugar, corn syrup, confectioner's glaze. That right there is probably that could be a little bit of a problem. Gelatin, which is probably bone marrow, sesame oil, artificial flavor, no big deal. Honey, the food colorings, I think they're going to be okay with that. I would think the gelatin, I don't know what that would do. The shellac, the confectioner's glaze, if that's got a lot of starch in it, that is going to give them the squirts. Corn syrup, they do fine on. Sugar, they do fine on.
Yeah. I've never thought of that before, but I wouldn't think it would be that big of a deal. And I don't know, but that makes sense though. You don't want them to get sick and have dysentery or diarrhea. So anyway, that's, I
don't know why would someone do that? I wonder. Now I'm thinking, unless someone has like an insight, how they're like, you can get sugar floor sweepings of sugar, and what a nightmare that is. But maybe someone has like a Brax Halloween candy inside. I mean, that wouldn't be my go-to. The effort to get that that eat just a lot. I don't know. That's just me thinking. I don't know.
All right. And
well, guys, it's been an hour and a half. It's been a lot of fun tonight.
Yeah. Real quick. I just want to run through real quick. Super chats once again. Thanks, Brian. Freedom Apiaries, Redfish, you, Greg, and then Ian Casper. Ian Casper's from Utah. He had lunch with me that day. We were in Utah, and just a great guy. Ian has had a good year this year. He occasionally reaches out or he asks questions, and I try to answer on the YouTube channel. For those who watch my channel, you'll know that anytime you ask a question, I try to reply it the best I can, as long as the question is respectable and not, anyway, as long as it's, which 99% are. And so I appreciate all the comments and interaction on my channel. And Ian is one of those that I actually met when I was in Utah. He's had a good year. He's made some honey, and it's kind of exciting for him, I know. And I appreciate your support, Ian, and thanks for the super chat. Appreciate everyone for being on here tonight. But it is time to go ahead and kind of start shutting this thing down. Real quick around the horn, Brian, what you got coming up over the next week?
Inspections. visiting Greg and just riding the wave right now. So that's about all. So
all right, yeah, I'm going to be taking the week off from the bees this week. We have something else going on, and so that's one reason I wanted to peek in on them really quickly last week, and I also wanted to experience a few stings. That's another reason I did it, because I knew, especially when I thinking about smoke, I think I needed my apiary. They say with arthritis, and so that's. No, I'm just kidding. I really didn't want to do that, but anyway, it was okay, and but I don't plan on doing anything. 2 weekends from now, I will definitely be whipping through them, trying to get the strips out and just maybe do a few mite checks and things like that. But really, we're kind of in a holding pattern right now, just trying to keep them healthy, make sure they have weight, make sure they're looking good, and just preparing for next year. Greg, why don't we turn it over to you? Let you kind of bring it on home. Next week, the stream will be actually on your channel, Greg. So I'm going to let you take it away.
Got a lot of great guests in line to get them on the podcast, get them on the stream team chat. Going to be a lot of fun. This coming the colonies that are kind of cruising up and building, so we can split them down, are doing just that. Everybody else is holding queen cells, little mating boxes. When those get shipped out, we'll be in consolidation mode. So we're at that time where we've already hit the brick wall of exhaustion. We've already have fumbled the mental gymnastics. We're starting to work through that. We can start to see the finish line now. It's finish out strong, stick to the plan, keep moving forward, and try to make as many right calls as we can late in the year to put ourselves in a successful position for next year. We're thinking about Bee Expo prep. We're thinking about all those things that we need to do there. I think the stream team chat, guys, we got to talk about the 2024 creator convergence. I mean, just gonna tease that just a little bit, throw something out there. We gotta figure out what that's gonna look like. We've got Learning Yard coming up this Saturday for all of our Learning Yard folks there at Nature's Image. Brian will be there. I think we're going to be digging into a few colonies, but we're going to be talking about, what is your strategy to finish out strong the rest of this year? What does that look like? A lot of folks haven't had enough experience yet to make a call, have enough experience to say, here's where I want to go. So we're going to help them think about their strategy. What are your goals? Where are you at? And make sure we get all those good pictures. Help folks start to get ready for wintertime. We're there. We're here. It's time to make it happen. Brian will be there, and possibly a world famous YouTube beekeeper might also be cruising through as they're cruising through this part of the country. That'll be pretty cool. Outside of that, we're just enjoying the ride, trying to hang on. Sometimes it feels like it's a white knuckler, and all you can do is just hang on. So I guess next Wednesday, 8 p.m. on the Nature's Image Farm YouTube channel, stream team beekeeping chat, 8 p.m. Eastern. I know it'll be a lot of fun. The last thing I want to throw in there is it is extremely easy at this day and age to be amazingly divisive. But we do have a choice, even in poor circumstances, and even if things are offensive, to use our words for good and our actions for good. Just because we don't agree with something, if we take offense by something, doesn't mean that we have to reciprocate in that same fashion or manner. A lot of folks, I think, are struggling with that right now, and I would encourage them to spend a little bit of time in Proverbs. But Bruce, Alabama friendly beekeepers, be sure to check out that Facebook group. They're as friendly as they can be.
Yeah.
Great group of folks there.
The opposite of divisive. We're trying to do the same thing Stan's doing in Texas, so that's one reason I wanted to bring that up.
Bring folks together. Exactly. Yep.
Preaching to the choir, yes, sir.
Yep. So that's an important thing to think about. We all get it. We're on the same page on all these things, but we do have a choice on how we move forward with that. Other than that, guys, hey, it's been a lot of fun tonight. I want to thank all the folks for joining us tonight, hanging out here in the comments, supporting all three of our channels. We love you guys. We appreciate you more than we could ever say. Until next time, we'll just remind you to be the lighthouse and be the change you want to see in this world. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.